Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one source for all things polling in the United States. And today we're going to be looking at the 2024 Senate elections and what my latest forecast is as of right now. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content just like this. And so we clearly see here the safe red states are going to be Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, as well as the special election there, Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, Indiana, and West Virginia. Now, I'm going to be looking at this, right, because we clearly see all these states broke for the Republicans by over 5 points in the 2018 midterms, except West Virginia, where they had a moderately strong Democrat candidate in Joe Manchin, but he is not running for re-election anymore, and the Republican governor is now the Republican nominee. And so I actually expect that race to 100% be an automatic flip for Republicans as of right now. Looking at the safe Democrat states, we have California, we have Hawaii, we have Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, as well as the state of Maryland. We also have Delaware and Connecticut. However, that New Jersey seat may actually be a little bit closer than what people are suspecting because of the third-party run that the incumbent senator may actually end up doing. And so that may throw a wrench within the two-party nominees and may take votes away from the Democrat. Looking at the likely Republican states, we have Texas and Florida as the first ones. Cruz will more than likely win re-election very easily by over 10 percentage points. Same thing for Rick Scott. Florida has gotten a lot more Republican in the past couple of years, and so I really don't expect that race to really even be competitive. Same thing for Texas. I think Cruz's popularity has kind of gone back up, and that alone already gives Republicans 50 seats. And if you were to add Ohio and Montana into this column, more than likely they would already be winning 51 seats. So Let's Talk Elections trying to tell you, oh, the Democrats have a chance at winning the Senate. They would literally have to win all the remaining 14 seats and flip a Texas or a Florida on the map. And probably it would more than likely be the state of Florida. And the probability of that happening is extremely low. So the fact that he's claiming that the Democrats even have a remote chance of winning is just very disingenuous to everybody as a whole. And for those of you who watch him for honest analysis, I'd tell you to come over and watch me instead, because I'm actually giving you the proper analysis on these races. Now, looking at the likely Democrat states, I forgot to fill in New York as safe. I mean, right now, I expect Trump to lose the state by 12 to 13 points. And so that Senate race, the Democrat probably will win it by 18 to 22 points. I don't really see any argument as to why that would even be remotely competitive. Now, if we get polling data and it shows it close, that may be a problem for them, but we'll see what ends up happening there. New Mexico, that race is interesting because, the last person, the incumbent won re-election very easily because Johnson, yes, Gary Johnson, the same one from 2016, managed to get 15% of the vote here and kind of split the vote with Republicans. And that would have probably been around an 11-point victory for the Democrat if Rich would have gotten all of the votes. And so that actually ended up really inflating the margin here. Now that I think the nationwide environment, see Democrats won the popular vote by 20 here on the Senate map. They won it by 8 nationally. And so if there's going to be about a, R+3, R+4 national environment, which is what I'm kind of expecting for the House, we would see about a 12-point shift in all of these states. Some may trend to the right, some may not, but a 12-point shift would indicate that a lot of these states would actually be remotely competitive or would at least even flip to the Republican as of right now. If you're going from D+8 or 9 to R+4, that's a pretty big shift, a 12 to 13 point shift to the right. And so that's why Texas and Florida are in that, plus 10 point column. And that's why all these red likely states are in that column. West Virginia is just going to trend a lot more to the right because of the fact the incumbent isn't running there anymore. And I want to talk about Michigan at some point because that one I think is going to be pretty interesting. But clearly, I think this race, Republican internals have it close, like within 5, but I'd say maybe it's like a 7 to 8 point win for the Democrat incumbent. Now, Cantwell in Washington, I actually think she's probably going to win under 15 points because here we had a plus 17 point victory. I actually think this race may come down to about an 8 to 11 point victory because of the fact that she's a really weak incumbent. And yes, she's going to win because of the fact it's Washington, but her being a very weak incumbent does not help her in the state of Washington whatsoever. And with that 13 point shift to the right on the national level, I wouldn't be surprised if the state was even within 5. But I'd say for the sake of trends and whatnot, I would probably say the state's probably an 8 to 11 point victory as of right now for Cantwell. In Montana for Tim Sheehy, I actually think he's going to win the race by about 7 to 8 points. Donald Trump, I think, is going to win the state by around 25. And so I can't see ticket splitting being that bad. And the seats had already trended to the right since, 2012. We saw here Democrats actually ended up winning the popular vote here by 12. I believe the national environment for Democrats on the House level, we can actually go ahead and check to see what the House results were. But I'm pretty sure it was like probably maybe D+4, D+5, something like that. And we only saw them win by 12 here. And then from 2018, you see about an 8-point shift in the popular vote from D+12 to D+20, but the race actually got closer. So the race has already been trending to the right. And so with the national environment being Republican favorable, I just can't see the state of Montana voting for Jon Tester once again. I just can't possibly see that happening. And Jon Tester and Sherrod Brown, which are kind of, moderate Democrat incumbents as how they promote themselves in these states, they were all calling for Biden to step down because they knew that their chances were in jeopardy. And I'd argue that they made a big miscalculation because I'd argue their chances with Kamala are actually far worse in terms of a national candidate. And so that's definitely going to play a factor. But I think Tim Sheehy probably wins by 7 to 8. I mean, he's leading in the polling right now. So, and then we have the state of Ohio. State of Ohio is interesting because if we look up the polling data for this, we clearly see that Moreno is sitting at 40%, Brown's at 45%, but Brown is the incumbent and has been around for years. And if we look, he got over 50% here in 2018, and he also got over 50% in 2012. And the race also trended to the right. It only got 0.8 points more Democrat, despite the popular vote getting way more favorable for Democrats. And so the race is already trending to the right. Bernie Moreno, unlike what people will tell you, is a pretty solid nominee for the Republicans. And so this race is going to come down to the wire. I'd say, Donald Trump, I expect him to win the state of Ohio by 15 to 20 points. So I'd say possibly a 5 to 6 point win for Moreno in the state. I'm going to hold strong and say that it's a little bit over now. If Trump was winning the state by about, 11 to 12 points, which would be normal for a competitive election, I would say it would come down to the wire. There would even be a possibility that Sherrod Brown could even win it, but I would say that Moreno more than likely ends up winning that seat by 6 to 7 points. But in terms of the way it votes, it may possibly trend to the left or to the right by about a point or so. And that would kind of line up because I'm suggesting there's going to be a 12 to 13 point shift nationwide, and he won the state by 6.8 percentage points last time around. And so if you were to have a 5 to 6 point win, that's like an 11 or 12 point shift to the right, which would kind of match up with the national environment shift. And since the state really has been trending to the right, it would kind of make sense for that to end up being the case. And for Virginia, I'd say it's going to be in the likely column. I think Kane wins re-election by 7 to 8 points. Hung Kao is a good nominee for Republicans, but I think with Tim being the incumbent, Trump not being the favorite in Virginia right now is going to really kind of hurt the down ballot effects. And so I think Tim probably wins by about 7 to 8 points. New Jersey is interesting because I think that race could potentially be even closer than Virginia. You have two Democrat candidates technically. One of them is the nominee, but the other one is the incumbent senator possibly running third party. Now, that may not be confirmed because he may have to resign from his position due to bribery, charges and whatnot. But if he does run third party, that may take away like 1 to 2% of the vote from the Democrat, and that could make it closer. And that kind of whole scandal has really tainted the the New Jersey Democrat Party in a way. And so that race may potentially even be closer than West Virginia. Well, we'll see what ends up happening there. Maine, I think that Angus King probably wins re-election by 12 points. I mean, Trump is probably the favorite to win Maine, but they are very known for ticket splitting really hard. And so I could potentially see that happening. And in Minnesota, we have, Amy Klobuchar, who's a big overperformer. I mean, she won her race by 24 points in 2018, but with a 13-point shift to the right, and the fact that Minnesota's Democratic Party is kind of facing odds right now, I more than likely think that, and the fact that Trump also has an opportunity to pick up the state, I actually think that more than likely, I'm pretty sure that she's going to probably win the race by under 15 points, but it would probably still be like a 13, 14 point win. Like, it's not going to even be remotely competitive. She is very likable in the state for whatever reason. She tends to outperform the nationwide environment by quite a bit. So that is where that race stands as of right now. And it's been trending to the right, but I don't think it would trend to the right enough to have it be, within a couple points. And now we get to the more competitive Senate races, the Rust Belt, Arizona, and Nevada. We'll look at Arizona first. Kari Lake is down in the polling by about 3 points, right? And the thing about these races is they tend to understate, the top of the ticket support, because the top of the ticket then tends to have down ballot coattails and will kind of help out their candidates cross the finish line. And with a 13 national point shift from 2018 Senate races, to be honest with you, this one's hard because Lake isn't necessarily the strongest candidate, but Gallego isn't the strongest either. I'd say maybe she wins the race by about a point or two right now. That's kind of where I'm at with that race. I'd say she narrowly ekes it out by about a point or two. I expect Trump to win the popular vote by 5 and win Arizona by like 8 to 9. And they're not really known for ticket splitting way too much. So I think that would probably end up being the result on that day. Probably about a point or two for Kari Lake as of right now. I mean, it still could very well be Till or even go to Gallego. But I'd say, based off the way that Trump is probably going to win the popular vote by 4 to 5 points, I'd say that Kari Lake barely gets over. Nevada is interesting because Rosen won by 5, and she has a challenger, Sam Brown, who is a retired war veteran, and he kind of has this unique thing where he's kind of damaged in the face and stuff. But there's no way he's getting 42% of the electorate. And her as an incumbent, she's down at 46%, which isn't good. I mean, she's gotten over 50% in a lot of her elections here. She never ran here, but she did run in 2018. The one time she ran, she beat the incumbent and got over 50%. And that Republican got 45%, despite being very unpopular. That Republican got around 45% as well, but she's not even polling high enough. This Republican got 55% back in 2006. So it's like Republicans have never gotten below 45% of the state. And so to insinuate that he would end up getting 42%, I think is a little disingenuous. And I think that he maybe get around 46, 47, somewhere around that effect. So this race may be hard, but I'd say Sam Brown, based off the national shift, probably wins by about a point or two as well, similar like Kari Lake. Now, McCormick, I think, is going to go down in Pennsylvania by 3 points. I think Trump wins Pennsylvania by 7 to 8 points right now. But I think in the Rust Belt, you have a lot of candidates that are very favorable to Republicans, and I think that overall McCormick is not the strongest pick. I think he probably loses this race by 2 to 4 points as of right now. Now, Michigan's interesting because the Democrats here have seemingly always underperformed the other two, Rust Belt states. Here, Stabenow kind of won by more than these, but then here, she did significantly worse than Casey and Baldwin, and she wasn't necessarily the most popular. And now Alyssa Slotkin is running because Stabenow actually retired, so it is an open seat, and Rogers isn't the worst candidate. And the fact that Donald Trump is going to win the state probably by 6 to 8 points, I'd actually give Rogers the race very, very narrowly. And in Wisconsin, it's kind of the same thing. I expect Trump to win the race by 7 to 8 points. And with those down ballot effects, I mean, this is going to be a harder one. I mean, it could really go either way. Based off of the polling, based off the fact that Eric Hovde's kind of gotten the race competitive in polling, and They tend to underestimate Republicans there on all levels. And the fact that Trump's going to carry over the ticket, he may be able to win that race by like a point or so, maybe a little bit less than that, but possibly by a point. And so there you have it. Republicans at 56 seats to Democrats 44 seats as of right now. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, to stop by at the #1 for everything 2024 election. And I will see you guys in the next video.